We're back with part 5 of this week's reading of the Messianic Jewish Family Bible, Tree of Life Version, TLV. And it's hard to believe we're already at part 5, but we did cover quite a bit here. And what I want to do before I recap chapter 7 is I want to look at some of the footnotes that we have, and also looking at one of the footnotes is actually in reference to Luke, chapter 1, verses 32 to 33, in reference to chapter 7. And that reads, well, actually, I'm going to go back to 31 and read Luke 1, 31 to 33. Behold, you will become pregnant and give birth to a son, and you shall call his name Yeshua, Jesus. He will be great and will be called Ben Elion. Adonai Elohim will give him the throne of David, his father. He shall reign over the house of Jacob for all eternity, and his kingdom will be without end. And we talked about about the prophecies leading up to Yeshua, Messiah, all the way from Adam. Actually, we had gone through all the prophecies with that, from Adam to Abraham to Jacob to David to the family of David. We were talking about the tribe of Judah to the family, and David was of the tribe of Judah to the family of David, and how David's kingdom was established forever, and it continued into Yeshua, and Yeshua's kingdom will reign forever. There's a type of shadow too that we had just read also in chapter 7, where God is saying that, Solomon, referring to Solomon, I will be his father, as well, and he would bless him. And we're looking at Hebrews 1:5, for to which the angels did God ever say, you are my son, today I have become your father, and again I will be to him a father, and he to me a son. So that was also talked about in Hebrews in the New Testament. And in continuing this, there's a footnote, and it is dealing with Revelation 11, verse 15. And this is Yeshua's established kingdom. The seventh trumpet, the seventh angel trumpeted, and there were loud noises in heaven saying, the kingdom of this world has become the kingdom of our Lord and of his anointed one, and he shall reign forever and ever. And that is um, speaking of Yeshua's kingdom being established forever. And this was already prophesied way back to David, and promised to David that his kingdom will be established forever. And it continues on with Yeshua, because Yeshua is from the family of David, from the tribe of Judah, from the branch of Jesse, came Yeshua. So again, to really recap chapter 7, Nathan's prophecy came to David. David wanted to build a temple, a house for God, and actually Nathan made that, actually told him of the Davidic covenant that God had made for him, but that no, David would not be the one to build the house of God, that it would be his son, and God would guide him and bless him, and as long as he is following what God had wanted him to do. And we're gonna learn about Solomon later. So we're going to move on to chapter 8. David's kingdom expands. Now, afterward, David attacked the Philistines and subdued them, and took Metheg-Ammah from the hand of the Philistines. He also defeated Moab. He made them lie down on the ground and measured them with a cord. Every 2 measures of them were put to death, and the 3rd measure was kept alive. So the Moabites became vassals to David, bringing tribute. David also defeated King Hadadezer, Hadadezer, son of Rehoboam of Zobah, and he went to restore his dominion along the river. David captured from his 1,700 horsemen and 20,000 foot soldiers, and to David hamstrung all the chariot horses while reserving 100 of them for chariots. When the Arameans of Damascus, and the Arameans are also known as the Syrians, just to let you know, because Damascus is in Syria today. But they're also known as the Arameans in some Bibles. No, the NASB calls them Arameans as well, and the Messianic Jewish Family Bible calls them Arameans. But if you look at the King James Version, they're called Syrians. When the Arameans of Damascus came to the aid of King Hadadezer of Zobah, David struck down 20,000 Aramean men. Then David stationed garrisons in Aram of Damascus, and the Arameans became vassals to David, bringing tribute. So Adonai gave victory to David wherever he went. David also took the golden shields of Hadadezer's officers and brought them to Jerusalem. From Beta to Berothai, towns of Hadadezer, King David took a vast amount of bronze. Now when King Toi of Hamath heard that David had defeated the entire army of Hadadezer, Toi, and that's spelled Toi, sent his son Joram to King David to greet him and congratulate him on his victory in battle over Hadadezer. For Hadadezer had been at war with Toi. Joram brought with him articles of silver, gold, and bronze. These too King David consecrated to Adonai, along with the silver and gold that he had consecrated from all the nations that he had subdued, from Aram, Moab, the Ammonites, the Philistines, Amalek, and from the spoil of Hadadezer, son of Rehob, king of Zobah. Then David made a name for himself when he returned from striking 18,000 down from Edom in the valley of Salt. Then he stationed garrisons in Edom. Throughout all Edom he stationed garrisons, so that all of the Edomites became vassals to David. So Adonai gave victory to David wherever he went. David reigned over all Israel, and David executed justice and righteousness for all of his people. Joab, son of Zeruiah, was commander over the army. Jehoshaphat, son of Ahilud, was recorder. Zadok, son of Ahitub, and Ahimelech, son of Abiathar, were Kohanim. Sarai, Seraiah, was scribe. Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, was over the Cherethites and the Pelethites, and David's sons were chief ministers. So that's the end of chapter 8. So I'm going to quickly recap that, and I'm going to talk about in chapter 9 then the son of Jonathan, because this is a really important chapter. So basically, as we recap chapter 8, we're just looking at how strong David is becoming, and his triumphs are discussed in this chapter. And as time goes on, David's kingdom grows very strong, and God is with him through all of this. And you can bet, David is looking to God for direction as well. So we're going to move into chapter 9, and I had mentioned earlier in an earlier chapter of Jonathan's son Mephibosheth, who actually ended up becoming lame because when Saul's kingdom was under attack by the Philistines, there was a great panic in the land, and um, Mephibosheth's nursemaid actually, in her haste, had picked him up and went to carry him, and actually dropped him and actually made him lame. But he did survive during that time, and actually David learned about Mephibosheth. The covenant loyalty to Mephibosheth. Then David inquired, "Is there anyone still left from the house of Saul, so that I may show him kindness for Jonathan's sake?" Now there was a servant from Saul's house, whose name was Ziba, Ziba. So they summoned him to David. The king asked, "Are you Ziba?" "Your servant," he said. The king asked him, "Is there still anyone from the house of Saul to whom I may show the kindness of God?" There is still a son of Jonathan, Ziba said to the king, with crippled legs. Where is he? The king said to him. Ziba said to the king, He's there in the house of Machir, son of Amiel in Lo Debar. Lo-Debar. So King David sent word and brought him from the house of Machir, son of Amiel, from Lo Debar. Then Mephibosheth, son of Jonathan, son of Saul, came to David, fell on his face, and prostrated himself. Mephibosheth, David said, Behold your servant, he answered. Don't be afraid, David said, for I will surely show you kindness for the sake of your father Jonathan. I will restore you all the land of your grandfather Saul, and you will always eat bread at my table. Then he bowed down and said, What is your servant that you should turn to look at such a dead dog like me? Then the king summoned Ziba, Saul's servant, and said to him, All that belonged to Saul and to all his household I have given to your master's son. So you and your sons and your servants will till the land for him, and you will bring in the yield so that your master's son may have food to eat. But Mephibosheth, your master's son will always eat bread at my table. Now Ziba had 15 sons and 20 servants. Then Ziba said to the king, According to all that my lord the king commands his servant, so will your servants do. Thus Mephibosheth used to eat at the table, just like one of the king's sons. Mephibosheth had a young son whose name was Micah, Mica. All the members of Ziba's household were servants to Mephibosheth, but Mephibosheth lived in Jerusalem, for he ate at the king's table regularly, though he was crippled in both his legs. So this was the son of Jonathan, and Jonathan's son of Saul, and David has had a special bond. And even though Saul had turned on David, Jonathan did not. And David and Jonathan had made a covenant together that they claimed would be eternal. And if anything happened to one or the other, they would look after the descendants. So David and Jonathan loved each other as brothers. Because of the hatred Saul had for David upon the death of Saul, Jonathan and Saul's other sons, Abinadab and Melchishua, the remainder of Saul's family, fled because they were fearful that David, who was now king, would seek vengeance on them because of Saul's wickedness. Mephibosheth was Jonathan's son and was described lame of feet. He was only 5 years old when the news of Saul and Jonathan came out of Jezreel. His nurse took him up and fled, and in her haste to flee, she dropped him, and he became lame. When David had learned of the death of Saul and Jonathan and Saul's other sons, he asked if there was anyone left of the house of Saul, that he might show kindness to them for Jonathan's sake. So he was told of the servant of Saul by the name of Ziba, and David sent for him, and he asked Ziba if there were any survivors of the house of Saul, and he did learn that Jonathan had a son who was lame on his feet, and he was residing in the house of Machir, the son of Amiel, in Lodebar for many years. And David sent for him, and initially Mephibosheth was afraid when he arrived. He fell on his face, saying, Behold, thy servant. And David remembered his covenant he and Jonathan had made, and he took Mephibosheth in to live in the kingdom with him and took care of him. So he stayed in Jerusalem and ate at the king's table, and David made him as a son. He also made sure Mephibosheth's son Micah and the servant Ziba and Ziba's family were provided for. And David showed great mercy in spite of all Saul did to him. He loved Jonathan and kept his promise to his dear friend. And David basically restored the house of Saul through Mephibosheth, and Yeshua restored our inheritance to us that was lost. We had been lost, and because of sin, Yeshua gave us grace and mercy in spite of our sin. He removed our sin through his blood and sacrifice of his life for us, showing the greatest love of all. So that is Mephibosheth, son of Jonathan. So we're going to go on to chapter 10, Aram vanquished, and this is Syria. It came about after this, the king of the children of Ammon died, and his son Hanun, Hanun, reigned in his place. Then David thought, let me show kindness to Hanun, son of Nahash, just as his father showed kindness to me. So David sent word by the hand of his servants to comfort him concerning his father. But when David's servants arrived at the land of the children of Ammon, the princes of the children of Ammon said to Hanun their lord, do you think that David is really honoring your father because he sent consolers to you? Has not David sent his servants to you in order to explore the city, to spy it out, and to overthrow it? So Hanun, he believed, basically, as we're going to see, he believed the lie, actually the fake news, that these people were telling him, and he actually did some nasty stuff to David's servants as a result. So Hanun sees David's servants shaved off one side of their beards, cut off their garments in the middle at their buttocks, and sent them away. When they informed David, he sent word to meet them, for the men were greatly humiliated. The king said, stay in Jericho until your beards grow, then return. Now, when the children of Ammon saw that they had become a stench to David, the children of Ammon sent and hired for the Arameans of Beth Rehob and the Arameans of Zobah 20,000-foot soldiers, and the king of Makkah with 1,000 men plus 12,000 men from Tob. When David heard about it, he sent Joab and the whole army, the mighty warriors. The children of Ammon came out and lined up in battle array at the entrance of the gate, while the Arameans of Zobah and Rehob and the men of Tob and Makkah were with them, were by themselves in the field. When Joab saw that there was a battle line against him in front and rear, he chose of all the best troops of Israel and arrayed them against the Arameans, the Syrians. But the rest of the troops he committed to the command of his brother Abishai, and he arrayed them against the children of Ammon. Then he said, if the Arameans are too strong for me, then you will help me. But if the children of Ammon are too strong for you, then I will come to help you. Chazak, let's take courage. And let us take courage for the sake of our people and for the cities of our God, and may Adonai do what is good in his eyes. Be strong, take courage. Just that. So Joab and the troops with him advanced to battle against the Arameans, and they fled before him. When the children of Ammon saw that the Arameans had fled, they likewise fled before Abishai and withdrew into the city. Then Joab returned from assaulting the children of Ammon and went to Jerusalem. When the Arameans saw that they had been defeated by Israel, they regrouped. Hadadezer sent word and brought out the Arameans from across the river, and they came to Helam with Hadadezer's army commander Shobach before them. When David was told, he gathered all Israel together, crossed the Jordan, and went to Helam. The Arameans arrayed their lines against David and fought him, but the Arameans fled before Israel. David killed 700 charioteers of the Arameans and 40,000 horsemen, and struck down Shobach, the commander of their army, so he died there. When the vassal kings of Hadadezer saw that they had been defeated by Israel, they made peace with Israel and became servants to them. Then the Arameans were afraid to help the children of Ammon any more. Well, and had all come about because of false information, and as we recap that, the king of the children of Ammon, actually Hannah and his son took over when the king of Ammon died, and David actually was intending to show kindness to Hanun and actually not wanting to overthrow his kingdom, and he was given an evil report which was not true. So it caused a lot of problems for Ammon and then Syria, who actually joined in. So when we're talking about the children of Ammon, we're talking about the country today of Jordan and also of Syria. And interestingly enough, no, there was no Palestine. It's interesting, probably the reference is to the Philistines, because there was no Palestine. And there is no Palestine today, actually, when we really stop to think about it. This is just more um, problems that have ensued against the nation of Israel. And it's interesting to note that the shape that the land that Israel was in when they returned, finally were able to return to the homeland. No one wanted to live there. It was a lot of swampland, and Israel now is, has lush vegetation. Of course, now it's a contested land when nobody had wanted it, when it, was not thriving. So it's very interesting when we look at history as well. I'm going to come back with a conclusion. We're going to do chapter 11 and chapter 12, and then we're going to conclude this week's lesson.